So, good evening, guys. Welcome to week 5 and also week 1 of quarantine for most of us. Um, this week was the reading about influence and the power dynamic and influence, especially in the workplace environment. The first reading was primarily focusing on how we are not necessarily aware of our influence over others due to the fact that we ourselves are being influenced by other people, which is partially part of it, and also the fact that we don't understand to what level we have. Power or to what level do we gravitate others to our own social and also our own influence. And furthermore, the article 2 was focusing on the milestones in psychology analysis and social influences. That one was just a research that's giving you different aspects and different research that was done, collective research on social influence, which was pretty good read to do as far as like seeing the historic aspect of it and seeing how it structured from the beginning and how it went on to different questions and different aspects of social influence. And the last one, which I liked the most personally, was the toxic employees, which focused on how toxic employees have influence over others and to what extent do they use that influence. I do feel like there is an interconnection between the first article and the second article due to the fact that the first article was focusing primarily just on how influence and how we are unable to, you know, acknowledge or even understand the dynamic of influence and dynamic of power because we usually associate power with a certain level or authority that's given to other people, but it's not just limited to that aspect. And even when you are analyzing others and seeing that influence, it may change your perspective on how influence functions, especially within a social environment, because once again, humans are social creatures, workplaces are social space. So I think a key factor that we need to look into is the fact that acknowledge is the fact that yes, we do have social influence in others and it does change our perspective, which I liked because they spoke about how managers have a tendency to blame others or have a tendency to relieve themselves of any responsibility for employees who were performing poorly. And that got me thinking because a lot of times we do have a tendency to just see that the individual or our underlings, I want to say underlings, I don't like that word. Okay, that our trainees, that's better, have a tendency to be, well, performing at a level that we do not think that we could change or that could be changed, but we never actually compute that information and compute the fact that we might be the individuals that can influence them and can actually ignite that motivation in a general sense. But then they spoke about the toxic and the triads of adult triads, which I love the most because the adult triads was kind of a little spooky to it. But they spoke about how narcissism, I think is Machiavellianism, as well as I forgot the last one. It was, but they formed this triangular, this is triad part, sense of influence where individuals would either manipulate other people's emotions in order to obtain what they want to obtain from them or just create a false narrative for social interaction and social friendship when in reality they are manipulating others in order to do that. And they did determine about hard tactics and soft tactics, which was the most fascinating part because it says that Machiavellism falls under soft tactics. And quite frankly, it was very interesting because they did do the research with gender differentiations and their sense to manipulate others based on the gender types. And which I was trying to do research and I was trying to find an article about that in the last trimester, I believe. Well, 2 trimesters ago. I wanted to do research on how the social space and workplace bullying was actually influencing others and how people manipulate others, but I never really thought to look into that dark triad itself because I couldn't find any articles that actually um, focused on how employees would manipulate others, which is the toxic employees. Now, what I do feel though is that the first article focused on how we do not know our influences. So I want to know like how many toxic employees will actually know that they're being toxic employees, and if it's just a social trait that they inherited, because Machiavellianism is often regarded as one of those toxic traits that we already have or we form due to our social construction, personalized social construction. So I wanted to know how, to what extent that we could actually influence others without even knowing it, and to what extent are we actually being toxic without even knowing it ourselves. Because this article is saying that influence, the primary article is saying that influence itself is not something that we recognize. But then how would a toxic person recognize that they're being toxic? So there's a little bit contradiction, but if you actually trying to create a theory in that sense that most toxic people don't know they're toxic, which I'm pretty sure they have research on that, which I would love to do, but this week has been a very busy week, especially with the stay-at-home work thing. Um, but yeah, it was fascinating to me. As far as the second article goes, it wasn't the most intriguing, but it was a collective work, which was in fact, yeah, it was pretty good. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Oh, and psychopathy, I think. Nobody really thinks of psychopaths when it comes to actual work toxic, but that's not something. I think that's like the extreme end of the spectrum. But I guess the article did address it and did say that there are a certain level, which is going to be the, I think the hard tactics, which most of them use, and narcissists will most likely use the hard tactics themselves. So moving on to the discussion part, it says, in what ways have you witnessed conformity in your workplace? I have witnessed conformity to the extent where others will try to rather conform in a social aspect, dressing wise, speech manners, inside jokes, etc., etc. But as far as conformity in the negative aspect goes, I have not seen a negative conformity, because, well, in my case, I would see that as workspace bullying, because negative conformity would rely on you changing the workspace and actually applying a pressure, which would be the hard tactic, in order to receive the response that you need to, which I don't think my workspace enforced that actually. As far as positive conformity goes, we like to ask questions. We always like to ask questions. Believe it or not, there are some workspace that does not allow employees to actually ask questions. We encourage that, even if it disrupts me in my middle of my flow, because usually sometimes I'm typing and I'm just in there. If an employee comes to me and they ask a question, most of the time when they first come to work with us, they would be feeling like they're bothering us, or that they in the way. But I dismiss that completely. I want to create an environment where an employee will come to me and speak, and I would be able to communicate and actually relay that information to them. So I do see that also with the rest of my juniors, because when they see that I love, expressing that information and the kind of excitement that I get, because when I get to teach somebody something, especially in that level, I feel very excited. I don't know about most people, but for me, I feel like, yes, I get to display why I am where I am at, and also I get to display how I could relate that information and how I could help you grow, and how this company act itself could help you grow. The second part was power tends to corrupt, and absolute corrupt power is absolute. So I do not think power tends to corrupt. I believe that people tend to be corrupted, but those individuals have a tendency to put that responsibility and that reasoning to others. I don't think power corrupts other people. I think people are corrupted from the self. I've gained powers where I could fire and hire people, but I have not abused it in any sense or hold it over anybody's head. Because to me, I'm always going to see my position as a form in a way to better others. Always. Like, that's what, to me, it's like that's the best part about working, is the fact that I get to teach others about a certain information or a certain pattern, and when it hits them and they finally get it, that tick, that's when I get my most you know satisfying moments. Of course, there's also the payment and all that stuff because it helps pay for school and everything. But I feel as though like power and absolute power is not corruption, because I've seen a lot of individuals that's, especially my higher ups and my seniors, who have the chance to take over or behave a certain way with employees and juniors that they obviously do not like. But I've never seen them abuse that power or try to hold that power in their position over anyone else. I do believe that there are certain people who are who are more likely to be corrupted, but I don't think it's a matter of power. I think it's a matter of that person themselves.